Welcome back to Cream City Social, everybody, and we've got a very roads, interstate, public transportation-oriented conversation for you today. We're talking to Jeremy Fojut, the organizer of the Urban Spaceship Conference here in Milwaukee. If you're asking yourself, what the heck is an urban spaceship? Don't you worry, that's the first question I ask, and we'll answer that in just a second. But basically, Jeremy is a guru on all things transportation here in Milwaukee. Who knows about the guru part, but he is very plugged in the councils, groups, committees with the now mayor on how do we build infrastructure in Milwaukee that builds a city that we all want to live in. You're going to hear opinions on the proposed new expansion of the interstates and the public transportation. I think you're going to learn a lot. And so with that, here is a very honest conversation with someone making positive change in Milwaukee. So, urbanism. Big topic.
Huge topic.
But before we dive into exactly what it is, I want to ask, where's the spaceship come from in the Urban Spaceship Conference? Because this is a conference you and your organization have been putting on for 2 years.
Yeah.
What's the spaceship?
I was trying to think of wordplay on urban space. And then I thought, well, it could be a ship too, because I'm a little bit of a sci-fi nerd, so I was like, this would be a cool logo. So we went with Urban Spaceship, and there's no real reason why there's a ship other than I thought it would be a cool name.
I love that. Think of a vessel that takes us into the future.
Exactly. So that's how it started, and then people kind of dug it, and and the same question comes up all the time, like why is Urban Spaceship? And I'm like, well, I also had this idea of always changing the logo with different spaceships and then having that be like an NFT collectible, but then I just got lazy and never did that.
Gotta get your own crypto coin.
Yeah.
So what is this organization? It's called Milwaukee, right?
Well, the Urban Spaceship is separate from Milwaukee. Milwaukee is an organization that builds communities for companies and whoever will hire us. And so we have Fortune 500s that hire us. We have cities across the country that hire us to build community. Urban Spaceship started as just a passion of mine. So outside of the company, I started building this community because I was interested in it, because if I'm going to be in Milwaukee, I want to help push forward change. And so this started as me just getting people together that kind of thought like we could do better. And it started growing, and then we got on Twitter and everybody got very loud and very organized, and we're like, well, we should put a conference behind this. And so that's kind of how it started. And now it's not really anything yet. I'm talking about how it gets more like, what do you join? You don't really join anything, right? It's just kind of a community that aggregates and helps people pay attention to the issues, and it does that very asynchronously and very organic. So it's not a lot of heavy lifting. Most organizations that form, there's 25 committees, there's 100 board members, and by the time you're done meeting and having all the committee meetings, nothing's actually achieved besides having more meetings. And I didn't want to run this like that. So we're kind of evolving. The conference was very successful. But right now, it is just a collection of people that it's a Twitter community, a conference. There's a newsletter that goes out here and there periodically. And, where we go is probably meetups. We're talking with the Urbano conference, which is the Latino Real Estate Development Conference, of some kind of partnership. So there'll be some partnerships. And, where I kind of see it as 4 events, like bigger events, quarterly events a year, with the Urban Spaceship Conference being the pinnacle, and then periodic meetups around certain issues that are social by nature. We lost that after COVID. We lost IRL a lot, and I think we benefit from that serendipity still. And so trying to bring people together in person, In a perfect world, if this got big enough, I'd love to create some kind of granting system for tactical urbanism grants and stuff like that. We'll see. We'll see. So with a long answer of I don't know what it is. It's not a lot of stuff, but it's nothing really.
Do you plan on having another conference this year?
Yeah, we'll do the conference in November again. Like I said, that was extremely successful beyond what we even thought. We still have, from a monetary standpoint, it was successful that we, the best we've ever done there, and that allows us to do more things throughout the year. And then from an attendance standpoint, people came from over 16 states, not including the speakers, to just come to the conference when we didn't have, our ad budget was $250. So, so that was, you could kind of see like, the speakers we got were pretty premium. We brought in some really high profile guests, and that was a really good, I think Milwaukee as a million person city was the theme of the conference. So I thought that helped drive people that wanted to be part of that conversation. So we'll do it again. I don't have an exact date. I don't have any themes. Just know there'll be a lot of diverse topics, and I don't even have a location. So yeah, but we'll make it happen.
Excellent. So let's get into the kind of broader vision for Milwaukee. Could you explain the idea of the 15-minute city movement and what a more human-centric city could look like?
And is this what you talk about at the conference?
Yeah, we have. There's people that. Yeah, there was a session on the 15-minute city. I believe we had I can't remember the city we brought in. I think there was someone that we brought in a speaker that was trying to has put forth policy, and a lot of it has to do with zoning, a lot of it has to do with infrastructure in the city. So it's stuff beyond a day-to-day control of the normal citizen. But to step back, the 15-minute city is about how I can walk to services within 5 to 15 minutes. Like most of my daily service needs, like if I need a specialty item, I might not be able to walk to that or bike to that. But the 15-minute city, Milwaukee didn't, used to be designed like that. And as we sprawled out, we don't have that, right? You think about how we have built everything in this city now. It's been, you work over here, you live over here, and you go to the bars over here, or social experiences over here. All that can be that one of the same place. I mean, and a good example of that is if anybody in Milwaukee is listening to this and that they've been to the Northwestern Mutual building, or at least seen it, and right next door is a Northwestern Mutual apartment, and right over there is a couple of restaurants and a grocery store. All that stuff is walkable. I don't have to live 30 minutes and commute to my job. Like that shouldn't be a thing that we designed for ourselves to be lonely and isolated all the time, right? So yeah, the 15-minute city is a concept that your service, a good example, since we're at the university, is Downer Avenue. So Downer Avenue, if you live off Downer, there's a hardware store, there's a bread store, there's a grocery store, there's there's coffee shops, there's a CVS, there's a bank, there's a liquor store, because you need that. There's a movie theater. Yeah, so you have everything within, 5 mile. There's a pretty 15-minute walk there, bike. So more, but you can tell me what other streets are like that. I can't even think of Brady a little bit, but not the grocer. Well, I guess Glorioso's, but like, so there's, all those services are dry cleaning, that's all on Downer. So I think there's not a lot of streets like that, maybe KK in Bayview, but in the city proper. Now, obviously there's other neighboring suburbs that have it. And when you think of the best place you've ever been in the world, it's probably because you walk down a street with services, commerce, people sitting around, having coffee, talking, meeting with their friends, their family.
It's more fun.
Yeah. And here you don't have a lot of that. There's no vibrancy of walking on the street. So, I'm glad the mayor has kind of really made this a priority to where we have to be able to think through development a little bit more strategically than we have been.
And you talked to the mayor, and I'd love to hear what your guys' conversation was like. But just to step back a little bit, when did this start happening where we didn't have community-focused or walkable cities like this? I mean, is this all the way back to the 1900s when this started happening?
This city was like a mecca for walkable neighborhoods back in the day. It started in the 50s with the freeway expansion, right, and people leaving cities. And then, the flight from the city and all the other reasons of why I wouldn't want to be in a what people call a crowded area, even though they love going to a concert, like isolation concert. So like people like being around other people, but for whatever reason, they don't want to live by other people. So, people moved out, but we made it more convenient to do that by expanding freeways and things like that. And so now you have this area where, we spend more time in our car than we ever have in human history. And that has a lot to do with stress, burnout, why I don't like my job. And, you don't think about it because some people say, well, it's my decompress time. It's like, no, 2 hours of your day in a car is your decompress time. Like, you're not with your family or your friends or, going for a walk, doing anything active. That's not a decompression. So, yeah.
This loneliness that you touched on, I'm seeing that everywhere in the world. And it's kind of the way we live forces us to be like that in our cars, in the suburbs, in cubicles. Is there an overarching theme there, or is the world just kind of becoming more individualized like that?
This is a big conversation. So I'm actually building a tech startup around isolation and loneliness right now, around the psychology and neuroscience of friendship. And I'm using the algorithms to connect people across companies right now. And so I have studied loneliness a lot, and I have my own theories. One theory is the increase in asynchronous communication leaves out room for empathy, laughter, connection. So that when that got bigger through digital communication, from your Slack to your text message to your social media, everything is asynchronous. So you're never a lot of times live together.
I was gonna say you send off a text, then you wait for it to get one back.
And it could be like 3 hours. So things are lost in that translation. So that part of it is, obviously digital. Part of it is the way we design cities. Like we designed cities to be away from each other, as we talked about just previously, but and we designed them to be alone. I mean, there's a really good study. I can't remember the gentleman who did it, but he talks about the slower car traffic goes. He did this whole study on it. The more friends and social connections you have in your neighborhood. I mean, I would probably challenge everybody to name 3 of their neighbors, and they probably couldn't anymore, right? You just don't do that. And so, all the asynchronous communication, the digital connection or digital communication, the design of city, and many other things have allowed us to be comfortable being with like this kind of societal change. But now we're seeing that massive impacts. That depression is up, suicide is up. I can't think of one thing when it comes to mental health that's been improving. And a lot of it is because, Harvard did the longest study on human happiness. It was 75 years they followed people around. And the number one thing they came back with was close friendships was the key to happiness. And now the average American has 1 or less close friends when it used to be 5 years ago, like back in the 1980s. So pretty crazy stuff. But the way we design cities has a lot to do with this. You think about what I like to call like just these serendipitous moments are these moments on the street when you walk down and you might see someone and you go, hey, and you're kind of like, it gets you happy, you smile, right? Like even on college campuses, notorious for this. You see somebody, you're like, oh, even if you don't stop and have this deep conversation, it boosts your mood. And we just tore that out of cities. You don't see anybody doing that anymore unless you're on a college campus, which is, that point of connection.
So having a car-centric city, it definitely affects our well-being and happiness.
Yeah.
But I want to talk a little bit about the economic impacts of this. You talked a little bit about growth and how you talked with the mayor about that. Do you think that having a more walkable city could help Milwaukee solve its growth problems?
Yeah. So people move to neighborhoods that are vibrant. And when they're desolate, like a lot of the streets are in the city, they're not, the property value goes down, crime goes up, people don't live there, businesses don't move there. So when there's a heavy dose of people walking on the street, retail shops get more traffic, more relationships happen, crime goes away because people are on the street. Not goes away as a city, but that area, and because people are looking out for each other. And so that has to do with the economic vitality of why someone would want to be in a city. Unless you want to live in isolation, like in the countryside, you generally want to be around services, and and growth only happens when we need people to live here, but then people who live here need services, and so that's how it contributes to it.
Right. And why is growth important for Milwaukee? Why should we be concerned about the stagnating population?
Yeah, what's this million person city?
If you're not growing, you're dying type of thing. We've been dying since the 70s. So that leads to financial crisis. That leads to disrepair in the tax base. That leads to lack of funding for schools because people are not enrolled in the schools now. That leads to lack of services. Everything around not growing is pretty much dying, and the city can't afford. Obviously, can't even afford to do it anymore with their looming financial crisis.
Yeah. So Milwaukee is notorious for being the most segregated city in America. That phrase has been used a lot to describe Milwaukee. Does our lack of walkability contribute to this inequality?
Yeah, I mean, people generally, like, if you're new to a city, you generally go to certain parts of a city that you identify with, right? So you can see why the heavy immigration side is still going to the south side of Milwaukee. But now this is the most striking, if you ever do get around the city, and, from the south side of the city, the streets are smaller, the shops are smaller. If you go to the north side of the city, that is predominantly African American, you have Fond du Lac Avenue, you have Hampton Avenue, you have Silver Spring, you have all these streets that are like 6-lane highways, right? So what does that tell you from a design standpoint? That tells me that the powers that be at the time wanted you not to be a part of that city. They wanted you to drive right through as fast as possible, contributing to. So then what happens when you do that? You see the deterioration of businesses. You see that it doesn't become a community anymore. It becomes unsafe because not a lot of people are around. And if you go, you can literally, every major thoroughfare on the north side is pretty much a freeway, even though they're kind of called highways or streets. They're like 6 lanes. People are going 65 miles an hour. Try to put your kid outside on the street there and raise a family when cars are going 65 miles an hour. And you're seeing that with, in a couple of years, the rise of reckless driving. And it's not just kids that are doing the reckless driving. I mean, it's not even a socioeconomic thing. People are recklessly driving because that we've designed that way. And some are different than others, but every day I live by a Humboldt Park, and I see a 65-year-old go through the red light. I see someone really well off in a suit driving 25 miles and over on a residential street. So it's not like, what's reckless to you? All that seems reckless to me. Right. So I think, sort of back to your walkability question, if you don't create walkable environments, you don't create places for people, you create places for people to drive through and not experience. Right.
So I feel like we're kind of talking around this idea that whatever you build and interact with on a day-to-day basis, whatever roads you drive down, whatever stores you go to, whoever you talk to, wherever your parks are, it influences how you live and how you think.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I completely agree, and it influences. People don't go a lot of different places all the time, right? So most people stay within that 1 to 2 miles of your neighborhood. Like I can't remember the number for restaurants, but most restaurants that open, unless they're not like a marquee restaurant where they're pulling people from all over, they're going to get most of their business, like 60% from within that 1 to 2 miles. What that tells you that what you have in your community is where you go to, and people don't I like Wauwatosa, but I'm not going to the restaurants because I have like good restaurants in Bayview. So
same.
And so because we're creatures of habit, I'm going to what's close to me, unless it's a special occasion or something. And I think if you don't have those things in your neighborhood, and it doesn't be a restaurant, it could just be a normal service like a laundromat or something. Those kind of things go away. And if we don't design a place the biggest thing to me is when I was a kid seeing, I believe I played in the street every single day, and I would definitely not play in the street right now. like as an
I was
adult.
going to say, I don't think that happens
Like,
anymore.
No one does. I've never seen anybody in the street anymore. And not that, like society evolves and society changes. Maybe that's just not a thing. Go to the park. But you see a lack of social cohesion now because you don't know your neighbors because people aren't playing in the street. And so that's why no one knows their neighbors unless you're on like a Nextdoor app where everybody just bitches about their neighbor.
I was gonna say, even then, you just see a picture and you hate what
yeah.
they're posting. Yeah.
But it's not the same as
Yeah,
that
yeah.
in person. So let's talk about how we're designing the city now. So we're expanding the highways. What do you think of this idea?
Fucking bullshit. You said I could swear. I'm not against freeway expansion when it makes sense to connect city to city. We're like Chicago to Milwaukee, right? Like that makes sense to me to have, it's a heavy trucking lane. I don't see a huge problem in it. When it comes to, we've already done this a bunch of times in Milwaukee and already destroyed neighborhoods. And it's like we can't even pick up you don't even have to pick up a history book. You can just Wikipedia, you can just Google it now. And people look at it and go, yeah, let's do the one thing that completely destroyed Milwaukee years ago. It ripped up neighborhoods, displaced people, segregated the city. Let's just expand on that. And then people are okay with it. I obviously get heated up on this. And you have their business lobbying groups and, advocating for this. Obviously, they're getting paid off by the road builder and construction builders. And, and then you have Tony Evers, who's supposed to be liberal and care about the stuff, who completely doesn't, because he's paid off as well. And so you have like these two powers working, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so it doesn't make sense to expand freeways in cities where people have businesses. It makes sense to connect things, right? Connect with whether that's train, bus routes, shipping, like that makes sense to me. But when you're in a city, a city is there to experience, not to drive through again as fast as possible. That's not why you build cities.
I've been thinking about that lately. Even like I-94, it's so wide. 43 going up. I mean, there's a whole neighborhood that's like 4 or 5 blocks of just a community that we just bulldozed.
I mean, Torrey Hill by Marquette is the biggest one. I mean, that whole interchange was one of the coolest neighborhoods, just visually when you look at old pictures, and they just ripped it out. And obviously the famous was the Bronzeville neighborhood, which just tore out like 400 African-American businesses for progress is what they called it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's this idea of induced demand, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you build the highway, more people move out further, so you have to add more lanes, and then the cycle continues, and we just it's a never expanding process.
It's such an interesting thing because I'm trying to figure out, like I always try to put myself in the other person's, okay, why did they really want this? Is it, and I can't figure out why they want it. Like I just cannot solve that problem. I'm an entrepreneur. I have some of my companies have failed, but some have made it, and I've started like 6 companies. And my whole thing is, how do I solve problems? How do I solve problems? And this one I just can't figure out, other than the fact that it's ego and it's lobbying paid off, that and it's a couple people in the room, where the math adds up. I mean, anybody that drives around the city sees the roads are deteriorated, even the freeways, right? Mm-hmm. And yet we think we have and then we want to expand. We can't sustain what we have, but now we want to expand. I mean, I don't get that at all. I mean, and it's a statewide thing. I was just up in Minocqua, Wisconsin, and we were coming down through Wausau, and this is what I do for fun. I check the DOT traffic statistics on how many cars drive through and then I say Wausau has 3 lanes, and I'm like, Milwaukee has 3. Well, is there a lot of traffic in Wausau? It was like 60,000 cars a day, which is what 1 lane can pretty much handle, and they have 3. Mm-hmm. So we overbuilt everywhere. Not this particular freeway in Wausau is not by the downtown, so it didn't get affected. But it's just crazy to me of like sustainability from a fiscal conservative point of view, right? Like if I was a fiscal conservative, I would look at this and go, it's unsustainable, but we keep dumping money into it. But for whatever reason, fiscally conservative politicians don't want to be fiscally conservative when it comes to road building.
This doesn't apply to this.
And then we have liberals that are doing this. I just don't get it. So
do you think it's the money?
I know for a fact that the MAC's lobbying group was lobbied by I can't remember the name of Well, one of the MMAC people went to work for them as the executive director. So they were paid to lobby on behalf of this. And now that person went over to work as the executive of the road. It's not the road builder, it's the builders associate. There's like 10 of these things.
Sure.
That put money in both sides. They don't just put, it's not just one or the other. So it's equal opportunity to destroy your neighborhood. So yeah, it's definitely a money thing. Otherwise, it's a couple companies saying, we need to increase our shipping lanes. Think of some of the companies in the valley and stuff like that. And I'm like, if we have a 6-minute delay rush hour right now, it's like 26th in the nation. Really low of metropolitans on the commute time here. And I just don't see. And then what they did for 94 specifically was they made an extra. They built the not the off ramp, but the shoulder exorbitantly larger than they would ever build a shoulder on any other freeway to hide the cost of what the extra lane will cost. And so if you go through the reporting, no one would ever build a shoulder as big as they're building in some of these areas. But by doing that, they say, well, the extra lane only costs $200 million more. It really costs more than that because the shoulder actually takes the cost out, and they don't take that into consideration. So it was like hidden in the whole process.
Devil's in the
details.
Yeah,
I don't like the expansion of that one. And I'm sure it's not going to stop. I mean, you're probably, well, the weird thing about this one too is that, so if you've ever driven 94 West and you go out past where they're talking about expansion, it goes to 4 lanes, right? But then it goes down to 2, and it's only 6,000 less cars per day that go through the 4 that go through the 2. And so, and then it goes back out to 3 to Brookfield. And to me, I'm like, okay, so you just built the zoo interchange and they want to expand to 4. Why would you not make 4 lanes all the way then? So you're going to pinch it and then pull it back out, which is going to cause more delays there when you have 4 going to 2 back up to, and I just, so beyond induced demand is going to be this thing where we're actually going to create like a pinch point there. And I'm pretty sure, I don't see that we're going to get our 6-minute delay down to no delay. I just don't see that as a world where it's possible.
No, yeah, especially as you try to build stuff just to the right size, overbuilding, you're going to have some congestion sometimes.
None of their predictions of traffic have ever come right. So
I was looking at some graphs. There was a graph that had 24 data points of the car users in all the lanes, and it was like 500,000, or I'm not sure that number's right at all. But then they said that 16 of those 24 were like outliers and negligible. Because they didn't agree with the story.
Their
that
own
they
numbers
wanted to
are
tell.
all bad. They contradict themselves in their own numbers. Like they're talking about safety, but then if you go through the data, the way they're doing the lanes, because they're going to pinch the lane, they're going to narrow the lanes down to like as low as they can get legally, which will, I've never seen a road that expanded and then pinched the lane size down. In their own numbers, it shows more.
I saw that it was like more dollars in all these fatalities and all these crashes.
And then you're just like, and then because then that was the rally cry from the other side was like, well, it's just because of safety now. Because at first their expansion didn't work, and then everybody called them out on that. Then then the safety argument tries to save everything, like it's gonna be safer. And then you look at the numbers, and their own numbers say it's not safer. And I just gotta like, what is it then? What is the solution here? Why are we doing this?
Your friend Matthew, sorry, one sec. Your friend Michael Bradley met with the lobbyist, and there's a quote that says the lobbyist told him after he went through the arguments of there's no increase in daily traffic, these roads aren't going to increase safety by any means. The lobbyist said, the road is old, this project is happening, and we're going to make the same amount of money anyway. Yeah,
that was at Urban Spaceship conference 2 years ago. Yeah, we interviewed, we had the road builder, or he was the MMC at the time. So like this is happening. It's happening, right? Like, and I don't like reconstruct it. It needs to be reconstructed. It's old. You shouldn't have left turn lanes like on I-75. Like that's what would actually increase, or what will increase commute times during rush hour, that one time a day where it's busy, will be the removal of that ramp. Because when you have left people or left exits, and a lot of the ramps when you come through 94 are very short, you want longer ramps, and so that will increase commute time or that will increase the delays probably by itself. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing, because that's really why you end up in traffic jams, is because people are switching lanes and people coming into the on-ramps. And if the less on-ramps when people talk about the Autobahn, like there's not as many on-ramps, so you can go as fast as you want, so it's not as delayed as you want.
I'm thinking of the express lanes in Chicago.
Yeah.
So thankfully there is, we're seeing some pushback here, a sort of movement building around this. Have you heard of the plans to remove one leg of 794 in the city?
Yeah.
And what do you think about this?
Tear it down. I'm one of the proponents that tear the Hone down too. But I know that would like freak everybody out. So I'll just like I'll try to win with just the downtown spur of it. I want to go all the way because I don't see that, like, I do take it sometimes downtown. Most of the time I don't, but when I do it, yes, there's no one on it, so it's very convenient. But I don't want to build my city for convenience. I want to build it for connection and community. And so what we did when we built that was we remember when they built the water treatment plant, there was a whole village, there was a neighborhood out in the aisle. You could really build some interesting development in coming out of Bayview, kind of by that one tower. That's the high rise in Bayview that's kind of by itself. I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
Yeah.
And you could build some more development there and clean up the harbor even more than they are in the Inner Harbor District on the other side. They could move the salt mines somewhere else. I don't know why we need salt mines on the lake. Doesn't make any sense to me. We don't need the salt dripping into the lake. So the runoff, there's just like, when you design, like, why is Milwaukee so bad at waterfront development? We have the movement along the river, the Milwaukee River, which took a long time, but then you go up the Menominee and there's just dead area with, like, we have a recycling plant on the river that dumps all the recycling in the river. When you kayak down it, you get like attacked, dive bombed by seagull. So you have, like, in every city, they get that the water. We're doing a better job. I'll say that. Like, we're doing a better job. There's a large movement for it. But if you take down the Hone, which doesn't really need to be there, traffic could be dispersed. You could create a new road that connects and a new bridge. But you take down 794 downtown, it makes absolutely sense from the money standpoint, from the real estate standpoint, from Milwaukee really becoming a city that isn't, like, segregated by our own, even segregated. Now you're starting to see a little bit different, but for years and years and years, you had the third ward, and then you had death and isolation in the dead parking lot. When I say death, I mean dead, like dead land.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
yeah,
parking lots.
Parking lots and
empty.
People scared to walk through the tunnel or under the bridge at night. And then if you follow that, the freeway all the way up, it's just barren land, and you're like, well, this could be anything. I don't even know what it could be, but I think that by taking that down, there's some technical things you have to figure out, like leases that people had for lease of the state and now have to get them with the city, or who gets the land type of thing. But yeah, that should come down for sure. You even have a lot of people that are for freeway expansion that will take this down, which I don't understand why that is. Like the Chamber of Commerce is actually for removing 794. They've come out in support of it. So I don't understand that either, but so like I can't connect the dots there.
Where everybody's interest lies.
Yeah. So, but man, could you imagine walking down Broadway, having the streetcar on there, having this whole Broadway be this kind of major thoroughfare? There's just so much you can do when you remove the freeway there.
You mentioned how more walkability could make areas more vibrant and be good for businesses. So why would the Chamber of Commerce be for highway expansion?
I think if we go back to, they're being told that. So they have a lobbying group that, obviously the chamber has its own lobbyist on staff for issues for the members. And if enough members, enough board get behind it, you're an executive director, you're kind of in a rock and a hard place. You have to kind of go with it, right? That's your job. And so that's what I believe happened here. And then they didn't really think through, they didn't anticipate the pushback, I don't think. And what people really want. So like I look at this as someone that's worked in talent attraction and retention, which, a lot of people that are pushing for this freeway expansion say they want in the city. I have never, ever seen anybody say, I want to move to a city that's expanding freeways versus I want to move to a city that has vibrant streets and people can connect and entertain and go out and live and say, it's that kind of stuff. And, I have helped move a lot of people here. I've never had anybody say like, wow, if this freeway is expanded, I could see a whole bunch of people moving here. It's just not like a thing that goes to happen.
That's concrete.
But it's like, I don't know. I just, it's like one of those things where you're not going to convince either side anymore of the, like, well, who's right and who's wrong, but there's people, what I have noticed, there's a lot of people that are unaware of all the sides right now that are still out there. And that's what we're hoping to do with all this movement, is just to educate people on, we gotta stop doing this. Yeah. I don't know if that even answered your question. I was just going on another tangent about 94. I gotta stop with that.
So you talked about making areas more vibrant, more livable, more focused on living and people. So there is a movement to make Brady Street pedestrian only. Do you have any opinion on that?
Yeah, I think it looks cool. I think, what this needs to happen to get other neighborhoods to, because everybody's follow the leader on this, right? Someone has to do it and it has to be successful for it to start the domino effect. It's not going to domino effect if no one ever goes first. And I commend the Brady bid board, which I've worked with before, and Alderman Brostoff for really pushing this and getting the right team too, like Quabala Shaka Architects to, be the architect on this to what it could look like. I mean, we know what Brady looks like when it's shut down. It looks awesome, right? People are on the street. They have was 2 blocks from the futon shop. I threw this event. This was about 8 years ago. It's called the East Side Music Tour, where we put 80 bands in every single building in Brady Street, and you kind of walked around the street, and it was just magical to see that. And I think if that happens, if that goes through and they build it, you'll see a lot of neighborhoods starting to do that. Third Ward, even like Shorewood, you could see other areas.
I could totally see Shorewood doing it.
You'll see these pockets, as in Portland, Maine, they just started throwing up barricades in the whole downtown, and like there's like one through street now, but there's people everywhere. And I'm like, I feel like Portland, Maine I
was just there.
Was like, I felt it was like New York City when I was there this summer, and I was like, this town is like 100,000 people, and it feels like you're in Manhattan.
So it seems like the way to kind of shift the conversation at the city, or really at the national level, is really small, our neighborhoods first.
Yeah.
Prove it.
Yeah. Well, this is a weird analogy, but it's no different than the concept of a mall, right? People take transport, whether it's car or bus, to a mall, and they all congregate inside of it. And it becomes like a city and a neighborhood in a way, right? And people will walk like 2 miles in the damn mall, but they won't walk a mile to the mall. Like, so it's just like a weird psychology or psychological thing. And so that's the same thing we're saying. It's like, yeah, you can still, no one's saying don't take a car to Brady Street, but when you get to this area where there's a lot of, you're going to see the businesses just, I think, massive amounts of people shopping there now. And you're going to see, as a lot of those businesses turn over a lot, like now they're mostly become bars and restaurants. The retail, you lost a lot of retail, which is, project of where we are in the world. But I think you see a lot of things come back and a lot of things change over to where this is a retail corridor again. Because Milwaukee doesn't really have a retail corridor anywhere. I guess Brady Street isn't downtown, but like downtown, we don't have a shopping district besides the Third Ward.
Huh. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Also makes me think, so a little bit of a segue, where are good examples in the city right now? Are there neighborhoods that we have that are this vibrant, walkable, community-inducing spaces?
Yeah, where? Tell me. I mean, I would say, where are people walking? I mean, the only time, East Side is the only where I see people walking. I mean, what North Avenue is going to do as well, like they're doing a whole redesign of all their streets. They're shutting down Ivanhoe, in their new design, which is by between Hooligans and the food hall.
Yeah, a little weird side street that you cut
Yeah,
off
yeah,
of
it doesn't
right on north.
need to be there. A lot of those street like that don't really need to be there for automobiles. But the third ward, only place that you see people walking around. I mean, the public market really. I mean, the public market is like the crown jewel, right? Like I always tell people, like it's the only place where you see tourists in town.
Yeah,
and which is kind of refreshing to have a different opinion. But yeah, that's the only walk. And they did that. Broadway was always a through street. There was no park at the end of Broadway. I don't know if you know that. So that little Colorado Square, that wasn't there 20 years ago. They put that there. They made the angled parking, and then they widened the sidewalks even more. And now you have this neighborhood that formed around it. Before it was a through street where you could drive 40 miles an hour. And you can see the difference. Like we've already proven this stuff out that it works when you do it. It's just having having more, I guess, more aggressiveness on pushing for the stuff at the city level and not having people bitch about parking.
Are any other cities doing good things that you think we could copy to make more human-centric cities?
I mean, New York has went through a renaissance with this stuff, or New York City, shutting whole streets down. Let's see, where is we just talked about Portland, Maine.
You heard of Toronto?
Toronto.
I see some stuff on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, Vancouver does a good job of this
neat.
stuff. I'm just trying to think of. Yeah, I mean, there's cities doing it. It's nothing like no one's really overdoing it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some cities have an advantage, like Portland has a lot of smaller streets, and you see Portland, Maine, and Portland, Oregon as well have some of this. I would say New York City actually is. Chicago just announced I was just down in Chicago last week, and there's some street. They're really making an effort to calm traffic, and I've noticed at bump outs, they're gonna pedestrianize LaSalle Street, which is a major thoroughfare in Chicago. So they seem to be aggressive. It's the bigger cities that are taking this on, right?
I believe Millennium Park with the Bean used to be all parking lot.
Yeah.
And now it's a much more
now people come
more
from
vibrant
over.
space.
I do have to admit, I went to the Bean last time I was there, took a picture. I was like, come on.
Way better than a parking lot.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And the reason people love New York and they like to experience New York is because it is a walkable city and you can do all that.
I mean, anybody
kind of
that's
stuff.
been to like a city in Europe knows. I mean, not to always say like Europe did it but they always say, that was Paris, the best city. Why is the best city? Because you're walking, you're experiencing things. There's small, scalable shops. It's not overbearing. Things connect to each other. Like right now, you walk down Broadway in the Third Ward. Everything cuts off. You get downtown, it becomes a wasteland for a little bit, and then you can kind of start to get back in some commerce. So, connection matters from neighborhood to neighborhood, and I think you can even think about, Humboldt Avenue, like in River West. There's I can't remember the other street. Holden. That's the one. Yeah, like it's a divider street, right? Like we've built these streets where one side of this, like if you go one way, there's economic prosperity, and go the other way, there's no economic prosperity. Like connection from neighborhood to neighbor matters too, that we don't do a really good job of. But there's things. I would say I'm bullish though, the way the mayor is. Even DPW is starting to think a lot different. So yeah.
What did the mayor say?
I mean, so I was on the Millennial Task Force and I wrote a lot of stuff around this. And the mayor, it was the mayor's task force before he was mayor. And so we had a lot of back and forth on this is what we need to build. This is what we should do. There's a lot more in the Millennial Task Force stuff that we haven't got to yet. But this specific, I think he, liked it, this was great. And now he's putting it into action, which is more than just the novelty of this looks cool type of thing. And so I see he believes it, right? He knows it works. He's seen it work. I remember at the conference when he was like, I feel like this is my whole Twitter feed. So he's watching it. And I could say the last mayor didn't do that. I don't even think the last mayor was on the internet. And so that's why you had didn't care about topics like this. He wasn't right to where the people are talking about.
Yeah, I think we see a little bit of movement. They have the new bus rapid transit plan. Do you think that'll improve the city at all?
No.
No? Really?
No. I think it'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll be nice. I don't think more people will ride it because it's still not fast enough. It needs to be 10 minutes or under. So I go to a stop and I never think about it. The bus stops, so I've been walking around today, are going to have these like seats that fit 2 people on them. So they'll have a couple nice shelters. It beats a pole in the ground. But it'll be good for the people that already take it. I don't think it will increase ridership because it's not making it more convenient or a better experience for me. And so that is where we always miss out on transit. Like, yes, we deliver, like the bus rapid transit is going to be great for people that need to take it. But for someone like me who kind of wavers back and forth from bus to car, depending on what I have to do and if I have sales, stuff like that, it doesn't push it over the edge because it's just not fast enough, right? And there's areas where it dips in and out of private lanes. Like it doesn't have priority, it needs priority. This is what Milwaukee always does. We see something someone else does, and we wonder how we can do it at half the cost. And then we do it at half the cost, and it's not as good, or we finish one part of it, and we're like, let's just get it out there and do it, and then we never finish the other thing. So it's like a lot of that stuff happens, and we have to go further. And I think if BRT was starting now, I think we would have went further, but because it was under the last mayor, it didn't go far enough.
This thing about wanting to do what other people did successfully but at half the cost, is that kind of what happened with the trolley?
Yeah, that was someone's like legacy project, I think. I mean, think about like, oh man, the trolley. Like, think about what it could be is really cool. Like, but I mean, this is another thing. It's like you got to build all of it or a bigger majority of it because we're never going to build the rest of it because we'll continue to fight and say no one uses it. And this is the thing. The same as the BRT. I can think of project after project where we don't do all of it. And I'm not saying all of it where like we had to run this thing out to West Dallas, like not the old streetcar lines. I'm saying university, Miller Park, like it's become an entertainment thing, right? Like it is busy for entertainment. It's not used for commuting much. And so, I mean, I use it when I don't want to, like if I'm going, very rarely, if I'm going to the east side from downtown, I'll use it. But how often do somebody do that? Or maybe Cathedral Square. If they're like, I remember using it at Bastille days because I didn't want to, get anywhere near there. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Where we go with that, I know obviously they're going to build the other extension of the lake. That'll be nice for tourism because people could take, when people do drive in for festivals or something, they'll be able to park further away. But if it went to Pfizer, if it went to, if it went to Potawatomi, I'm in, So like those kind of things, but Milwaukee will never get past that. They won't be able to say it's okay for it just to be tourism, which I think it could be okay to be tourism because when cities have a lot of tourism, they can make up for the lack of density they have and people living. And so we don't have enough tourists to make up for the lack of people living downtown. We need about 10,000 more people to be living downtown to make it feel really vibrant. But so you can tell that, and 10,000 is a number, it's not like an accurate number, but when you see like Northwestern Mutual's conference in town and they have 10,000 people, you can kind of tell the difference of the streets.
How do you get more people to live downtown? Is that building more
it's building
apartment
more,
buildings?
Yeah. I mean, there's not enough places. Most of the apartments are over 95% full. Like they are full. And so you just need more housing and different kinds of housing too. I mean, everybody's probably single or retired or, there's no one with one kid pretty much. It's hard to do that. There's no one building housing for that downtown. Yeah. And there's no, like, what would you do if you were a kid downtown? There's like one dinky little park in Cathedral Square. Like there isn't anything really like a playground. So like thinking about, like we have gutted out the city for families unless they're coming for like to hang out for the day or for an event or something.
An event to Pfizer firm or something. Yeah. I was reading when you read that and I was like, wow, you're super right. There's nothing for a kid to do downtown.
There's no, I mean,
There's no parks. There's
there's like grass, there's parks with a stage, and if there's no band, it doesn't matter, right? It's about day-to-day things. And, but I do think the downtowns are going to my belief is that downtowns go from central business districts to central social districts, and they become places where people either live and they go for entertainment, but they don't necessarily work there because the future of white collar work can be anywhere. And so I think you'll see a shift over the next 20 years of that stuff happening, which will be great for downtowns, I think. And then you'll have to focus on tourism because, when people go to work, they're usually in a building and they don't leave the building. And when they leave the building, they go home. And so it doesn't really add a ton of value unless for lunchtime or breakfast time, you see an increase. People living increases a lot more. Then you need more services and different things.
If people want to learn more about this, how are there any resources? Like I'm thinking of, I forgot what the channel is on YouTube, Bikes Over Cities or Bicycle Ride. I'll try to link it in the description after
there's
this, but
really good podcasts out there, War on Cars, Talking Headways. I don't know if we had him at a conference a while back. A lot about that's you're in transportation. I mean, City Lab has a whole bunch of stuff. There's tons. I still meet a ton of people that have never heard the term urbanism. I've heard just the other day I was in a conversation like, so tell me what urbanism is, and it's got a different definition for everybody. But I
was gonna say where I grew up in Merle, Illinois, definitely have no idea what that means.
Yeah, and when we even talk about small towns, like small towns that invest in this stuff too win out. Like you think about Cedarburg downtown, like it's a great downtown. Port Washington. Like I could think of even like East Troy rebuilding their square downtown. East Troy was actually the last streetcar stop. So my great grandpa for 40 years worked for Energies, and the streetcar to this day from East Troy, we took it in all the time to downtown, would get you there same time fast as a car. And so, and he didn't have a laptop then, so I don't know what he was doing 45 minutes every day, but in the car, but in the streetcar. But you think about like those small towns that invest in urbanism, you're seeing them revitalize and not be so car centric.
You talked before about how our city is kind of designed like this is one zone for entertainment, this is one for living. Do you think we could benefit more from mixed use zoning or zoning for multiple uses in one area?
Yeah, I am on the side of like we really need to rethink zoning, right? We need to allow people to build a lot more than what they want to build. Now there's design standards and aesthetics, and we can get into height restrictions, but the fourplex is basically illegal to build in a lot of areas now where there's a lot of fourplexes, like in Bayview, to build something like that.
And what's a fourplex?
Like 4 apartments, like, smaller, okay. just 4. Those are some of the, in some places we can't even build those anymore because it's not single family in a single family zone. So, it's complicated. You have to really be a nerd like Michael Bradley in zoning code to like go through that stuff. I don't really go through it, but, to get back to your question around like, what can we do? We really need to focus on how do we rebuild main streets. And main streets to me is, you think of what's happening on MLK in Bronzeville right now. Like it's a main street. Bringing that back will bring the neighborhood back too. And there's, Mitchell Street. Bringing Mitchell Street back will bring the neighborhood back. So because people want to live around main streets, and we kind of ruined them by widening them, by widening a lot of these things and, putting in 2 lanes and a slip lane and, all these different things to remove. Think about National Avenue, Main Street, very long. That could be the gem of the city, right? Mm-hmm. In parts of National Avenue, the sidewalk might be 2 feet. You want to talk about, you want like disinvestment or like, to me, like what makes, like, where do you see how you invest in cities is why a National Avenue is the sidewalk 2 feet wide or 3 feet wide, and why in the 3rd Ward it's like 10 feet wide. Like, and tell me the difference between why there's so many empty buildings on National compared to why there isn't over here. And it's just easy to figure out, but you have a state DOT that just doesn't care. and now they're walking back because we're about to redesign National, and this is a make or break moment here. If you can design National, because it intersects with so many neighborhoods on the south side, to be the street, it would really move Milwaukee forward, probably than even the freeway expansion or 794. Like you would see some equity. You want to talk about non-equity? Go drive down National Avenue and see the public infrastructure. That's what equity looks like, and the lack of it there.
I can just see that whole community.
Yeah, I mean, I think you go into like Silver City, or they rebranded it VIA is the neighborhood organization now. I think there's like 10 different ethnic restaurants there. Having that branded to where you come into, and right now it's probably one of the most unsafe intersections in the world. And I can't believe restaurants can even survive some of this, but if you bumped it out, there was some seating, you bring safety back, more people on the street. I mean, you ever hear that we had Mike Idle from Nomad, when Mike opened Nomad, it wasn't safe. And you couldn't even put tables on the street. And Mike went to the old mayor Norquist and said, I want to put these outside. And they allowed him. And, kind of the rest is history. Then people started sitting outside. The neighborhood becomes more safe because people are on the street, out of the street.
See him outside.
Yeah, now there's safer. Now everything is outside over there. It's like a whole beach down there. So, yeah.
So even as you talk about these benefits, some people might still prefer to drive. Why do you think people like their cars so much?
I mean, it's the convenience of not having. It's the convenience of not having to wait for something, right? I can, there is a convenience trade-off with public transportation and your own automobile. We've made the car so comfortable with your radio, this kind of thing, and so I think. And I'm not anti-car. I don't hate cars. I hate that we design everything around them. Like that's the difference between me and some of the other people on Twitter is I don't mind cars. I don't like that every street is designed for you to own the neighborhood when you don't live in it. And so that is where I get upset is like even in Humboldt Park, we have, I don't know if you've ever been to Humboldt Park or Trail on the Hill.
Yeah.
In the middle of the park, that wasn't an original design. We built, it could be a freeway. You could literally move like 6 lanes through this thing. Like, what do we need this stuff for? And that's the kind of stuff that we have to start thinking back on. And no one needs to drive through there. There's got to be 100 cars a day that goes through. And then people, it's this like self-entitlement of ownership of the road for them because they have an automobile that I should be able to do this. And I don't have that same feeling, but I, again, don't hate that people want to drive to things.
You can understand.
And you can understand it because it's harder to get.
Like you
think
said
about this. I had to go to Tosa the other day for something, and I looked at the bus route. It's with the two transfers I would have had to do it. It took like an hour and a half. It would take 16 minutes to drive there. Like no one, like if I have the privilege of driving there, and I can afford a car, that is, what am I going to do? Right? Am I going to spend an hour and a half there, hour and a half back, or whatever it was? I get why people do it because it's not convenient, or it takes up too much of their day to do it the other way.
And that ties back to the path of least resistance. Whatever we build, path of least resistance.
Yeah, I think we've almost made it required to have a car.
Yeah.
So people it's hard to imagine anything different.
Yeah, I live on the green line, so I have the convenience of shooting down. But if I ever have to go from the green to some other line, it just a lot of times doesn't make any sense for me, the way my day is planned or something.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, thanks for coming and talking to us today.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts for us before we sign off?
If you're not on Twitter,
good for you, everybody.
But the community is there talking about this stuff more than you can probably handle. There's a lot of content, a lot of opinions, some conflicting, some supportive, and that's okay. But there is a lot of talk about it, and it really gets you charged up to get in your city. So if you're not on Twitter and you want to, for whatever reason you're not on Twitter now, but you decide to get on, which is rare, but if you do, look, there's an Urban Spaceship community. There's, you can join the newsletter from there, and we'll see. There'll be hopefully new programming in 2023.
And the conference will probably maybe be in November.
Yeah,
I'm gonna guess.
most definitely maybe. It's an Oasis
Keep
album.
an eye out for it.
Look out for it, everybody.
Nice.
Well, thank you so much, Jeremy.
Cheers. Thank you, guys.